and it's probably a topic that we could have covered earlier, and it's Keir Starmer's Labour. And I often think, looking at the way the Labour Party has changed so dramatically since Jeremy Corbyn stepped down, which is effectively now 14 months ago, that I think Keir Starmer is probably going to get a place in the Lords entirely based on his management of the Labour Party to make it unelectable. It almost feels to me now that he's been brought in to do absolutely everything possible to destroy the Labour Party. Now, it may well be that he's just because he's gone back to being like Tony Blair, the centrist, trying to appeal to both sides, trying to formulate policies that doesn't annoy both sides too much. But I think his problem, obviously, is that when Jeremy Corbyn came in, he said, I'm not going to be appealing to right-wing voters. My appeal was going to be to those people who want a much fairer, more egalitarian, less corrupt society that focuses on the 99%, or certainly focuses upon the population as a whole, as opposed to a small elite clique. And it just means that when Keir Starmer then took over, he just appears to be appealing to the small elite clique again. So it may not be that he's that dramatically different to what's gone before. It's just that Jeremy Corbyn makes those types of people stand out so dramatically. But of course, the other side of the coin is, Tom, is that he played such a dramatic part in undermining Jeremy Corbyn. He was part of that right-wing, centrist blob of people who spent their time coming up with anything that they could to put voters off voting for Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. So none of them have any right to be in the Labour Party because they didn't accept the democratic mandate of the members when it came to voting for the leader of the Labour Party, both in 2015 and again in 2016. Incidentally, the 2016 leadership led to Jeremy Corbyn having an even bigger majority. So none of them were prepared to accept the democratic mandate of the members of the Labour Party. So quite frankly, none of them, absolutely none of them, should be anywhere near the Labour Party or allowed to be members. Because it's not as though they stood up and they said, well, we don't agree with a lot of what Jeremy Corbyn says, but hey, vote for the Labour Party. They almost did everything they possibly could to get a Boris Johnson government.
Yeah.
And the other side of it, if there is another side, is we've had 16 months and I can't think of one Labour Party policy. You know, at least when somebody comes in, they're coming in with this fresh start, if you like, even if it is centrist, fresh start saying this is what we want to do. I can't honestly name one policy, can you, that Labour Party currently represents?
Labour for business in some vague way.
Yeah, but it's sound bites.
Not necessarily workers,
not substance. It's sound bites, not substance, isn't it? It's more Blairite, Trumpian. Just say something that meaningless that hopefully people who don't take an interest in politics will succumb to. Mm-hmm. But from those people, obviously, who are interested in democracy and politics and making society better, it's a blank menu.
Yeah. As we discussed before, Jace, the both major parties in this country have lurched massively to the right in the last few years, particularly the last couple of years. Tories under Johnson and the extreme right-wing cabinet that are now running the country, the most right-wing government cabinet that we've probably ever had in my lifetime, at least, and the One Nation, the old Conservatives that were sort of regarded as moderate One Nation Conservatives have all gone. They've been kicked out. They've left, and it's really a very, very right-wing party now. And the Eurosceptics, the ERG, took it over. and are employing their own particularly unpleasant brand of nationalism. And same with the Labour Party. The Labour Party, has obviously lurched to the right. It's had its own internal struggle between the left and the right of the Labour Party, as the Tories did, if you like. And the Labour at the moment have won that argument. The centrists, the Blairites, the people like Peter Mandelson, and obviously Keir Starmer have won that, and Labour has moved massively.
But I don't agree that they've won. They've lost the last 3 by-elections.
Yeah.
They're probably.
They've won control.
They're almost certainly going to. Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're almost certainly going to lose the 4th. So in terms of the population just don't want to know Labour under Keir Starmer, because he doesn't stand for anything. And the problem also that they have is that in the Hartlepool by-election, whoever made this decision and whoever gave it the go-ahead, you had a candidate who was an arch Remainer. You had the leader of the party who is an arch Remainer, standing in a seat where you're trying to win back red wall voters who primarily voted to leave. I mean, it's beyond incompetent. I mean, Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer's together, I mean, it's doing a disservice to Laurel and Hardy. It really is. They are far beyond that. They're the Keystone Cops.
Yeah.
They're absolutely clueless, and yet they're the 2 main establishment parties that at the end of the day, come the election, it will be one or the other who have the power. It is so frightening.
It is. I know you're going to read out something from our colleague Adam, our friend and colleague Adam Samuels, about what's really been happening within the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. So go ahead and do that, Jace, and then we'll talk a bit more about for those that are involved and know about that stuff, and for those that aren't, how that affects them.
Okay. If you bully, harass, and are racist to your own members to the point they leave in their droves, if you break your own rules, break the law, act internally in fascistic, completely anti-democratic ways, if you shut down debate, suspend those votes of no confidence, suspend members with no reason, no evidence, no time frame, no right of appeal or representation, if you have media mates who report none of this, if you suspend more Jewish members than any other leader with complete impunity, if you betray the Jewish, Muslim, Black, Asian, Kashmiri, Palestinian, BAME, traveller, trans and disabled members and populations, if you position yourself to the right of the Tories on economics, if neoliberal centre-right Joe Biden looks like Karl Marx in comparison to you, if you lie about every single pledge you're elected on, if you ignore your own legal advice, if you stand with landlords wanting interest from people who cannot afford the basic rent above those renters, if you backtrack on environmental pledges, if you seek the support and endorsement of the Murdoch press and Daily Sunday Mail, if you welcome back in some of the most corrupt, previously sacked people ever to be in the party, who ask for favours from convicted paedophiles, if you cancel selection process, remove whips illegally, break PLP rules, break EHRC proudly and publicly, if you completely sell out, ignore our own legal advice, if you protect and refuse to prosecute all crimes, murderers, rapists and torturers, while extraditing those exposing those crimes, if you are in the trilateral or tripartite commission, if you are a sir, in addition to all this, if you lie compulsively, if you meet regularly socially with the Secret Service, if you ignore sovereign disciplinary decisions, if you promote racists and bullies, if you lie about anti-racists, if you listen to people in groups who are far right and Tory party donors, if you sell access to policy meetings and create tiered payment and membership options, you are absolutely not left-wing. And that sums it up. And that's probably only part of the problem. But let's face it, with those list of indictments against your name, you probably shouldn't be allowed out, let alone be a member of a leader of a political party.
And some of that I didn't even touch on, or really detail, the part that Starmer and Starmer allies had in undermining Corbyn, in promoting lies against Corbyn, and effectively working within the Labour Party at Labour Party headquarters in the last 2 elections, to stop Labour from winning. Quite the most staggering thing. I mean, we have no democracy when the leading opposition party is being undermined and effectively sabotaged by its own people over a period of years that covered 2 general elections, working for Labour to lose. Just extraordinary. And and there's this thing that there are people who are interested in politics, and including people who are Labour Party members, who know a lot of this, know the things that Starmer has done, that have been very, very, not only destructive to the Labour Party, but changing what the Labour Party stands for, and going against everything the Labour Party has always stood for, but also not just in terms of policies, but in terms of democratic processes, selection processes for candidates, things like that. But also, I would argue, make them entirely unelectable. And as you rightly pointed out, Starmer's lost his first 3 by-elections and probably about to lose Batley and Spen, which would be staggering. Corbyn, of course, won his first 4 by-elections. But at the moment, all the polls, despite the most horrific government that we have, and the extraordinary rates of death under the pandemic and the corruption, we have the Tories leading in most polls by more than 10 points. And that's partly, I think, there's how people that are involved with the Labour Party, left-wing people and people interested in politics, know a lot of the stuff that Adam outlined there and are disgusted by it. And so many people are leaving Labour in their droves, members and supporters, because of Starmer's leadership, and desperately hoping he will go and be replaced by someone far better. But there are also those, as you noted, there are those that pay not a lot of attention to politics, who have no incentive, who won't know any of that stuff that Adam outlined, but will have no incentive to vote Labour under Starmer because he hasn't stood for anything so far. He hasn't unveiled any policies, any new direction for the country, any change. It's just sort of more of the same. So I think whether you're interested in politics and a left-wing Labour supporter, or whether you don't really pay much attention to politics, there's no real incentive to vote Labour whatsoever at the moment. And of course, he would say, well, he's biding his time, and he'll unveil manifestos and policies when it approaches elections and so forth. But by then, it'll be too late. People have already got an opinion of him, and it's not good. And of course, the other thing is he's been given an easy ride by the media. They haven't been attacking him. 1% of the extent that they attacked Corbyn. And when it comes to the election and all the billionaires decide they want to keep the Tories in power, they will attack Starmer accordingly, and Mandelson, and so Starmer everyone will be reminded that he was the architect of Labour's Remain policy. So anyone that voted for Brexit, still believes in Brexit, will not want to vote Labour. Everyone will be reminded through the media that he was the director of public prosecutions when the decision was made not to prosecute Jimmy Savile, though albeit factually he had nothing to do with that decision. It was not under his remit, and he wasn't part of that decision making. But that won't stop the media and people on social media saying that he let Jimmy Savile off. Mandelson, of course, was close to Jeffrey Epstein, so they'll be described as friends of paedophiles and arch Remainers. And are they likely to get elected once the media start tearing into them like that? Of course not.
It's astounding.
I really hope Labour find a new direction and a new leader soon, because God knows we need it.
Yeah, and to finish off, it's astounding that somebody who's a member of the Tripartite Commission, which is a globalist, pro-European entity that wants neoliberal economics, again, globally, and was an arch Remainer, was chosen by the Labour Party in order to win back the Red Wall. It says so much of the people who are making those decisions and who are voting and orchestrating, manipulating the voting within that party, that they should choose
also,
somebody that is a born loser in this instance.
Yeah, and also it must be said, he lied. You know, everything he said when he stood to be leader of the Labour Party, he made a load of pledges, you know, around uniting the party and carrying forward the most of the elements from the manifesto, which was universally popular. So universally, it was popular with the vast majority of the public. You know, at the last election, 2019 election, when the manifesto policies were put before ordinary random people of all political persuasions, but they were not told which party those policies belonged to.
Exactly.
The Labour manifesto was by far the most popular. So those policies that the Corbyn led Labour Party put together over a number of years and sort of culminating in the 2019 manifesto, extremely popular with the public when they don't know, you know, who's put them forward. And he promised to retain most of that, and he's gone back on all of this. He's gone back on, you know, holding, you know, constituency Labour parties electing their candidates. He's parachuted in his own centrist candidates who haven't been popular, who've all lost. In the local elections, pretty much all of the centrist Starmer parachuted in candidates lost. And pretty much all the left-wing socialist candidates won in local elections. And of course, in Wales, where led by Drakeford, where the Labour Party is much more to the left, they did extremely well. And Starmer's response to all of that was to say, we need to go more to the right. It's just staggering. And if you didn't, you know, if we didn't know better, you know, there are a lot of people who believe that he's been sent in to destroy the Labour Party from within. I don't necessarily believe that, but it would be hard to do a better job.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and no doubt we'll be coming back to this